Looks like we're diving into Ghana's power situation today.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty tricky situation.
Definitely. And we've got this Medium article here. GRIDCo, ECG Ghana faces power outages, gas pipeline maintenance, and thermal plant shutdowns disrupt energy supply, published just this month.
December 2024?
December 2024. Yeah, it's, before we get into the specifics, have you ever experienced rolling blackouts?
I have.
Yeah.
Not fun.
It's like this weird game of energy roulette. Will the power stay on? Will it go off?
You never know when it's coming back on either, which I think is even worse.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really highlights how much we rely on consistent energy.
Doesn't it? This article really brings that to light.
It does, yeah. So this article focuses on the West African gas pipeline,
WAPCo.
WAPCo, yeah, which is currently down for maintenance.
Essential maintenance, I should add.
Absolutely, yeah, of course. It's got to happen.
It's like getting your yearly checkup at the doctor.
Right, but, what's the impact on Ghana's power grid when that happens?
Well, it's pretty significant when you consider that WAPCo supplies a lot of the natural gas that powers Ghana's thermal power plants.
Okay, so like the main source.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right, and that feeds into the national electricity grid, which is managed by
The Ghana Grid Company, or GRIDCo.
GRIDCo. Right, so when the pipeline's offline, even for a short time, it creates this bottleneck.
You said it, a big one.
And the article specifically mentions shutdowns in Tema.
Ah, Tema.
What's the scale of the impact there?
Well, Tema is a major industrial hub for Ghana.
Okay, so shutting down those power plants there.
It ripples out across the whole country, yeah.
Wow.
I mean, the Electricity Company of Ghana, ECG, they're the ones who distribute power. They've got to implement these rolling blackouts.
Yeah. Load shedding, I think they call it.
Yeah, load shedding, not ideal, especially with the holidays around the corner.
No, definitely not the best timing.
Definitely not.
But is this just bad timing, or is there a deeper issue here?
I think the article is pointing to a larger problem. Ghana relies heavily on natural gas.
Okay.
It's their primary source of energy.
Makes them pretty vulnerable then.
Yeah, all your eggs in one basket, so to speak.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
It is, isn't it?
It is.
Makes you think, how do other countries in the region handle this?
Yeah, I was just wondering that. Are they all as dependent on just one source for power?
Well, that's a really good question. And it highlights what I think is one of the biggest takeaways from this article.
What's that?
Diversification.
Diversification, okay.
When it comes to energy, that's key.
Yeah.
Some countries have a mix, hydro, solar, wind, but Ghana's dependence on natural gas.
Makes them more susceptible to these disruptions.
Exactly.
Makes sense. So even just routine maintenance on something like WAPCo.
Triggers a domino effect.
Wow.
And it makes you wonder, what can everyday people in Ghana do right now?
Yeah, what can they do?
Well, the article really hammers home the idea of energy conservation. I know it can sound a bit cliche,
Yeah.
but it really can make a difference, especially when everyone gets on board.
Like small changes add up.
Absolutely.
Like being mindful of leaving lights on, unplugging things, switching to more efficient appliances.
That all adds up, particularly if everyone's doing it.
Like saying many hands make light work, right?
Right, but in this case, it's many hands make later energy consumption.
Exactly. Every bit helps to ease the strain.
It does, but conservation is just a short-term fix, isn't it?
Yeah, like a Band-Aid.
What about long-term solutions? What about a more resilient energy system?
That's what we're going to be getting into next.
Yeah, stay with us as we explore what Ghana's energy future could look like.
And how they can avoid these disruptions down the road. Stick with us.
So before we dive into the potential solutions...
Right, you mentioned diversification, and looking at a map, Ghana seems like a good spot for solar, right?
It does, doesn't it?
It's practically on the equator.
It is, yeah.
Could that be like the silver bullet?
It's got potential, that's for sure. Ghana gets a lot of sun. It's high solar irradiance levels. But it's not quite as simple as just putting up panels everywhere.
Okay.
You got to think about grid capacity, storage solutions.
Oh, right.
And whether large-scale solar projects make economic sense.
More layers to this than I initially thought.
There are, yeah.
What about wind power then? I know some other African countries have really been pushing wind energy.
True, yeah, and Ghana's looked into it too.
Right.
There are a few wind farms already, especially along the coast where there's more wind, but scaling that up?
Faces similar challenges.
Yeah, grid integration, finding the land, and making sure you get consistent power even when the wind changes.
Sounds like there's a lot to consider when moving away from natural gas.
There is.
The article mentions something about needing a more resilient and diversified energy infrastructure.
Right.
What does that actually look like in practice?
It's kind of like a portfolio approach, right?
Okay.
Instead of just relying on natural gas,
Right.
Ghana could build a mix of different energy sources
Yeah.
tailored to what they have available.
So like a mix of what we've discussed, solar, wind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And potentially expanding hydropower,
Okay.
maybe exploring biomass energy,
Yeah.
even potentially considering nuclear power in the long term.
Nuclear, wow, that's pretty bold. I imagine there are a lot of safety concerns.
Absolutely. And political ones too. It's a complex issue with long-term implications, but some experts believe nuclear could provide a really stable baseload power source,
Right.
especially as Ghana's energy needs grow along with its economy.
So this portfolio idea, it involves balancing a lot of different factors.
It does, yeah.
Environmental impact, cost, reliability, political feasibility.
Sounds like a job for some pretty smart people.
Yeah, definitely.
And there are organizations like the International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA, and the African Development Bank. They provide technical assistance and funding for renewable energy projects in developing countries.
So there's international support for these initiatives.
There is, yeah.
But what about the people in Ghana? What can they do?
Aside from the energy-saving tips we talked about,
Yeah.
they can advocate for policy changes that encourage renewable energy investment, hold energy providers accountable for sustainable practices,
Yeah.
even support local initiatives like community-owned solar projects.
It's about a shift in thinking, right?
It is a sense of ownership over their energy future,
Exactly.
and that often starts small, at the community level.
Okay, so like those microgrids the article mentioned,
You got it.
I know they're like smaller, localized versions of the main grid, right?
Precisely. Yeah,
They can operate independently.
they can, often powering a specific community or even individual buildings.
So instead of relying on the main grid,
These communities can generate and manage their own power.
that seems like a game changer, especially for rural areas that are hard to connect to the national grid.
It is. It's a decentralized way to produce and distribute energy, and it aligns really well with the push for renewables.
And you can integrate solar panels, wind turbines, even small-scale hydro.
Exactly. It creates a localized, sustainable energy ecosystem.
That's incredible. So these microgrids could be a big part of diversifying Ghana's energy mix.
They could, and they also empower those communities to take control of their energy future.
That's really cool.
It is, and that's a key point here. While Ghana is dealing with these immediate challenges because of their reliance on natural gas, it also presents this opportunity to rethink their energy strategy, invest in new solutions.
And ultimately build a more sustainable future.
For its people, that's right.
That's a powerful message. But before we get too focused on the future, let's come back to the human impact of these outages.
Right.
You mentioned businesses being affected.
Yeah.
What sort of economic impact are we talking about?
It's significant, especially for small businesses who can't afford backup generators or who have products that can spoil.
Right, yeah.
Imagine a bakery that loses a whole day of baking because the power's out.
Wow, that really puts things in perspective.
It's not just an inconvenience, it's people's livelihoods.
And what about the social impact? The article mentioned this is all happening during the holidays.
Yeah, think about families getting ready for Christmas, all the preparations, cooking, keeping food cold,
Right.
even just lighting up the Christmas tree. Imagine if you couldn't do any of that.
That's pretty tough. It really highlights the consequences of not having reliable energy.
It does. It goes beyond just flickering lights.
Yeah, it gets beyond Ghana, too.
It does. It's a global challenge.
Yeah.
How do we transition to a more sustainable energy future while ensuring everyone has access to energy?
That's a big question, one we'll need to explore further, but for now, let's shift gears a bit and think about the political side of all this.
Okay.
We've talked about technology, about communities, but what about the role of the government?
Right.
What role does government policy play in shaping Ghana's energy future? So we've been talking about the complexities of Ghana's energy situation.
Yeah. And it's a lot more than just keeping the lights on.
It really is. It's livelihoods, the economy, even holiday celebrations.
Exactly. And that brings us to the government. What role does policy play?
Right. What kind of policies could really help Ghana move towards a more diverse and resilient energy mix?
Well, first off, clear and consistent regulations are really important
Okay.
that can attract investment in renewable energy projects.
So how does that work?
Well, think about things like feed-in tariffs. Those guarantee a fixed price for renewable energy that gets fed into the grid.
Okay.
So it makes it more attractive for private companies to invest.
It's like reducing the risk, right?
Exactly. It's like a safety net for investors.
Makes sense. And what else?
Another big one is streamlining the permitting process for these projects.
Ah, the red tape, right?
Yeah, all that bureaucracy,
Yeah.
it can hold things up for years.
And discourage investors.
Absolutely. And time is money.
For sure. So delays mean missed opportunities for jobs, for economic growth.
And for a more sustainable future.
So policy really sets the stage for all of this, but what about the existing infrastructure?
Good point. The grid itself needs an upgrade.
Right. Can Ghana's current grid actually handle a big influx of renewable energy?
Well, it needs some modernization to handle the ups and downs of things like solar and wind and smart grids.
I've heard that term, but what exactly does that mean?
Well, think of a traditional grid as a one-way street.
Okay.
Power flows from the power plant to the consumer. A smart grid is more like a multi-lane highway.
Okay.
It allows two-way communication, and energy can flow in both directions.
Interesting.
It uses sensors and real-time data to optimize everything, smooth out those fluctuations in supply and demand that come with renewables.
So it's not just about building new things, it's about making the system smarter.
Exactly, and that's where energy storage comes in too.
Okay, like batteries.
Batteries, yeah, pumped hydro storage. There are a lot of new technologies out there that can store excess energy generated during peak times.
So you can use it later when demand is higher.
Exactly, it's like an energy savings account.
That's a great way to put it.
And as these technologies get cheaper and more efficient, they'll play a bigger role in this transition.
So from policy to infrastructure to new technologies, there's a lot to consider here. But who's ultimately responsible for driving this change?
It's a shared responsibility, really.
Okay.
Governments set the stage with policies and regulations.
Right.
The private sector brings the investment, the innovation, the expertise.
Well,
And communities, they play a vital role in pushing for change at the local level, shaping the kind of energy future they want to see.
it's a collaborative effort.
It is.
What about the global picture? How does what's happening in Ghana fit into the broader conversation about energy transition?
Well, it offers a lot of lessons for other countries facing similar challenges.
Okay.
It highlights the need for diverse energy sources, modernizing the grid, and making sure communities are involved in the process.
It's a case study in building a sustainable energy future.
Exactly. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's important to remember the urgency of this issue. The power outages in Ghana, they're a reminder that energy security isn't just some abstract concept.
It has real consequences.
It does, real consequences for people's lives, their livelihoods, their well-being.
It's a call to action for all of us.
It is. We need to have these conversations, support policies that promote sustainable solutions.
And make changes in our own life.
To reduce our energy footprint. Exactly.
Even small actions can add up.
They can, by being informed, by getting involved. We can create a world where everyone has access to clean, reliable, and affordable energy.
That's a great goal, a fantastic note to end on. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been my pleasure. And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep pushing for a brighter, more sustainable future for all.